Hello, my darlings. Thank you for choosing me for your adventure. This is it, just you and me and the world you will create around you. It's going to be a little bit different today. This is going to be a chaptered one. I have written this on my AO3, which I will have a link in the description below if you're interested in reading. It's another Destiel one, because of course we can do with more Destiel. A lovely horror story. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the show The Hellavator, but I do urge you to try, especially this time of year. This story is about how Dean, Cas, and Sam attempt the Hellevator, but through the creepy and faux horror-filled tasks, will they finish and win the money? Let's begin. He didn't expect to get here. Dean looked down at the beautiful dark-haired angel lying asleep on his bed, his long arms wrapped around him and holding him close. Destiel, his gorgeous angel, was sleeping so softly, so innocently, safe and protected in Dean's arms. How had they gotten here? Sure, he had dreamed of this moment, ever since he had seen this beautiful man all those years ago. Destiel was a few years younger than he was. Being a classmate with Sam, he had needed a place to stay, so Sam had offered their 3-bedroom apartment. Ever since that first meeting all those years back, he had watched Destiel every morning, reaching for his cereal, drizzling it with honey, or making himself a cup of coffee before offering it to Dean. He watched Destiel as the days progressed, the way he worked, the way he moved, the way he spoke. It was torture to have this man here, living with him, yet not be able to do anything about it. He'd retire to his bed after their good nights and dream of him, knowing that something like this would be impossible. He'd never believed his brother and roommate telling him that Destiel returned his affections. It seemed too fantastical. Destiel was too pure, too much of what Dean wasn't. He had expected taunts or jibes, or Destiel leaving if he ever told him how he really felt. But he had never expected this. Destiel's beauty, his comfort, his warmth held so close, so tightly pressed up against him. He had to thank the angels above for this. He had to thank Charlie for this. And to think all this happened because of a silly idea. Dean gazed up into the large abandoned building standing high in the dark and starry sky. His best friend Charlie had told him of a scary game show called the Hellavator. All they had to do was complete a few tasks, get scared out of their wits, and win a ton of money. Easy. He hadn't expected it to be quite this creepy. Not that he was scared. Everything in this building was fake as fuck and creepy as hell, but with the dim lights and the creepy background music track of screams and water drops and chains dragging on the ground, it was actually making his blood sing with fear and morbid fascination. He was excited. Dean sucked in a long breath as he looked around. The room he was in was darkly lit. It looked like a reception in a lobby of a building. There was a desk to one side and a television that was showing pictures of him, Sam, and Destiel, before turning them into horrific versions of themselves with demonic eyes and blood smeared all over them. There were large, wiry spider webs all over the place, and a creepy clown doll with no eyes sitting on the desk chair. On the tables were small boxes filled with ribbons and bows. There was an entire wall on the side filled with chains, and next to it was what looked like a large elevator door. "Sam!" he yelled into the air, hoping his brother was near. He heard a familiar voice shout his name from behind him. Turning, he saw his lanky moose of a brother make his way into the reception area. "What are you gotten us into?" Sam asked, growling at Dean. He had only agreed to this challenge because he had been manipulated by his older brother. Blackmailed, more like it. Dean shrugged his shoulders, looking around the area. It seems we have been exploited. Castiel's voice drifted into the space, followed by the shorter man walking in from the entrance door. And the person to do so is not even here. It's all your fault, Dean, Sam growled, narrowing his green gaze at his brother. All I wanted was for us to do something together. If it weren't for Charlie's cockamamie idea, this is us doing something together, Dean retorted, checking out the rest of the room. Come on, it'll be great. A melancholic female voice echoed into the room, making the three jump at the sound, startled. Good evening, and welcome to the Hellavator. Sam looked up at the ceiling, hoping to find the speakers of the disembodied voice. The what? I believe they said. Dean held his hand up to interrupt Castiel. Please, step into the Hellavator. The large door before them split open from the middle to show a dimly lit and dank service elevator. There was a television on the right corner at the top, and squares and rectangles embedded into the walls on the left. The three stepped inside, and the doors closed behind them with a loud clang, making all three of them jump. The television turned on, the volume loud and screeching, and suddenly an image of two goth-like twins appeared, seated in front of a large desk in a room filled with macabre items. They were dressed in complete black, with smoky eyes, and looked as dark and scary as they possibly could. Tonight's story is all about the circus, one of the twins said. Dean heard Sam curse behind him. He never was good with clowns. Dean despised the circus as well, but this was getting exciting. What elaborate and scary story would these hot babes come up with? The three listened intently as the twins told them the story about a clown that was famous in the traveling circus, but he had been left behind by his crew one night when he refused to do one of the tricks. Upset, he started doing shows on the streets, but no one paid him any attention, the sisters continued, alternating as they spoke, but sounding eerily similar. The three watched the screen intently as black and white pictures showed up. He got angry and started stealing from the bystanders. Dean rolled his eyes as he watched the picture slide from the images of a man in a clown suit to a street and a bakery storefront. This story wasn't all that scary, but he listened on as the goth-like twins continued. Maybe this was just the beginning. The sisters explained how the clowns wanted to make his onlookers and bystanders just as happy as he had been. The circus had been everything to him. At first he would steal small things, like a little girl's bow ribbon or a boy's doll. And then he started pickpocketing wallets, watches, and all sorts of things. No one ever questioned his illusions and tricks, and no one ever paid attention to him either, except for the baker in the shop behind him. The baker watched every day and night and saw just how upset and how unhappy the clown was. And he wanted to help. If the clown created hype, then people would come to his store and buy his forgotten pies. He went to the clown one night, offering him an olive branch. He'd help the clown if the clown helped him, and the clown agreed he would do anything to get his reputation back up. But the baker was sadistic, and he was hungry for meat, human meat. The clown helped him, and under the baker's watchful gaze, he started to take people. He'd do a magic disappearing trick and hide people in large boxes, making them disappear, while in reality they were transported into the baker's kiln, where he would burn them alive for their meat, which he would then put in his burgers and pies. The people on the street knew the clown's reputation and thought the volunteers were part of the act. No one knew that the bakery that they were going into and the pies they were gorging on after was in fact filled with human meat. But the clown still wasn't satisfied. After a few months, the baker was getting overwhelmed by the amount of victims the clown was transporting to him. So one night, when the baker's fridge had been filled to the brim with human cuts, he took the clown, tied him into a straitjacket and chains, and locked him away in the cellar, making sure he stayed where he was while he used up his inventory. Sam shivered. Clowns were one thing, but cannibalism was just gross. But he and the other two listened as the sisters continued their morbid story. Apparently, the baker was not going to keep the clown as prisoner. He was going to set him free once all the meat had been finished, but the clown had turned delirious and had freed himself. He was angry at the baker, so one night he locked the baker in a coffin and buried him alive. Castiel shivered at the story. He hated anything to do with the dark, and coffins especially. Being buried alive was a very big fear for him. The ghost of the clown and the baker still reside in this building, the sisters continued, alternating as they spoke, their voice still as melancholic and monotonous. Both are waiting, wanting revenge for one another. The screen turned black, and the three were left to their own devices. It was a horrible story, Castiel stated, peering at the black mirror. Dean grinned, pumped up and ready to get this game started. All right, let's do this. The Hellevator suddenly jolted alive, making the three jump, trying to gain their balance, but they were ready. Dean and Sam had been avid watchers of the show, so they knew just what kinds of strange and horror-inspired things to expect. Everything around them was rigged to go off, including the elevator itself. This is exciting, Castiel said, his eyes filled with anticipation and mirth at the idea of what they were going up against. Who knew what was on the other side of the elevator? That was the beauty of the game. No one knew what to expect. They just went and had to do the task or be stuck on the floor until the end of the game. As long as I don't see any clowns, I'm golden, Sam said, clenching his hands into fists by his side. Dean chuckled. The entire story was about a clown and a baker. He knew for certain Sam was going to see a clown at least once. The lights flickered above them and the elevator came to a screeching stop. Suddenly, creepy carnival music started to play in the elevator. Fuck this! Sam shuddered. God, he hated the carnival. The sisters interrupted the three. So, who is going first? The three turned to one another as the lights dimmed around them. Dean peered at Castiel, who was standing beside him, his skin white, body shivering. Whether from fear or from excitement, he wasn't sure. I don't mind, Castiel stated quietly. Dean wanted to hug the frightened man, hold him close and tell him there was nothing to worry about. This was a game. Everything was fake. They'd be okay. The first one's the easiest, Dean said. But it doesn't matter who goes first. We're going to be helping each other the entire way. Castiel nodded, taking a step closer into the circle they had created. He really wasn't fond of enclosed spaces, and even though this elevator was larger than usual, it was still frighteningly close. Sam held his hand out in a fist in front of them, initiating the game of rock, paper, scissors. They played a few times, cancelling each other out, until, finally, only one was left. Guess I'm first, Dean smirked, psyching himself up to leave the safety of the elevator to whatever would be out there. Sure, he was annoyed to be going first, but it was better for him to go and for them to figure out what to expect. Castiel held on to his arm, wanting to pull him back. Dean looked back, gave the smaller man a smile. Castiel was acting like a wife saying goodbye to her lover going off to war. It's all right, Dean assured him, taking hold of his grip. I'll be the guinea pig. One of the rectangle-shaped drawers on the other end of the elevator suddenly popped open. Inside were 3 thick black walkie-talkies. The 3 reached in and took one each, checking the dial to turn them on. Doing a quick check, Dean clipped it onto his shirt, knowing he'd need both hands for this task. The sisters told him to open the elevator and leave. Dean grinned, pulling over the wired gate and the heavy doors. The hallway was almost pitch black, except for the yellowing spotlights in front of the elevator. You're so brave, Sam jeered sarcastically, smiling as he peered out into the complete darkness. Dean cleared his throat and stepped out of the safety of the elevator. And that's the end for Chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope you'll be here for the rest of the chapters. If you wish to read this story, it is on my AO3. The link is in the description below. If you're interested to listen to more, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you soon.